It's been 1 week now since Japan was struck with an earthquake and tsunami that are still causing profound danger and distress. Today, the nation paused to mark that ominous moment and then immediately resumed the race to contain a nuclear crisis. The threat level at the Fukushima nuclear plant has now been raised from 4 to 5, just 2 levels below the disaster at Chernobyl. From Tokyo, the BBC's Rupert Wingfield-Hayes reports.
A week on from the moment the earthquake struck, the whole of Japan came to a halt today to remember the thousands killed and the thousands more still missing.
I just jumped into the cupboard underneath it and stayed there for like hours because the aftershocks were so...
Chris, Alex and Anna were all teaching near Sendai when the earthquake hit. But now the 3 friends are leaving, evacuated by the British Embassy and tonight on a flight to Hong Kong. Alex's town took a direct hit from the tsunami, but he doesn't want to leave.
You feel like you're abandoning these people that I've known for 2.5 years, and my students, you learn about these people, you learn to care about them, and you're so attached to them, and you just feel like you're abandoning them by walking and getting out.
Alex is not the only one who appears reluctant to leave Japan. Of the 7,000 Britons who live in Tokyo, fewer than 100 turned up tonight for the first evacuation flight organised by the British Embassy. 150 miles north at the Fukushima plant, these are the new heroes of the hour.
We expect a lot of difficulties with the mission. It's a really dangerous assignment. The reputation of Japan and the lives of many people rest on your actions.
These Tokyo firemen have all volunteered for the biggest and most dangerous mission of their lives. The crisis at the Fukushima plant has now been upgraded to a level 5 emergency. This spraying operation is perhaps the last chance to head off a major radiation leak. And on TV tonight, Japan's Prime Minister was sounding increasingly gloomy.
I must tell you that the situation of the Fukushima nuclear power plant does not allow optimism.
It's not surprising that concern here in Tokyo and around the world is focused on the potential disaster at the Fukushima nuclear plant. But the huge concern for what might happen there is now in danger of overshadowing the much bigger human tragedy that is still unfolding along Japan's ravaged northeast coast. Rupert Wingfield-Hayes, BBC News, in Tokyo.
Well, along that coastline, the tsunami which followed the earthquake swept away entire towns. And today, the Japanese government acknowledged it is overwhelmed by the scale of destruction. At least 10,000 people are believed to have died, and that number could still climb much higher. The BBC's Damien Grammaticus has been to the coastal town of Miyako, where more than 1,000 people are believed to have been killed.
It's hard to believe it now. The way these waters rose, devouring all before them. But a week ago, a giant wave was racing towards the shore. It swamped Miyako's defences. Koji Fujita was standing on the 4th floor of the city hall watching. He says the tsunami arrived exactly half an hour after the earthquake struck.
All
the water was sucked out just before the tsunami hit. Half the river was taken away. I could see the sand on the bottom of the riverbed.
That boat you saw carried away lies crushed beneath the flyover. It's now believed at least 1,000 died here, adding to this nation's mounting loss.
This is the Mukaimachi neighbourhood of Miyako City, and what you can see is the way the homes here, many of them built of wood, were just wiped out. It's the buildings of concrete and steel that have survived, and where Koji Fujita saw that wave come in was just back there. The high street is just this way. Only now are many people in Mukaimachi coming to pick up what's left of their lives.
When Nakai Masai heard the tsunami sirens, she ran home to save her father. But they lost each other in the waves.
Everything was being swept towards me. I knew I had to get higher, so I kept climbing, trying to get higher and higher. I'd got separated from my dad outside our house, so when I saw the wave, I thought it was impossible that he could have survived.
3 days later, she found him in hospital, alive. Strewn all along the shoreline now are the shattered pieces of so many lives, taken by the sea that is silent now. Damien Grammaticus, BBC News, Miyako in eastern Japan.
Last week at this time, we spoke to the BBC's Roland Burke, hours after he experienced the earthquake in Tokyo. Tonight, we check back with him 250 miles to the southwest in Osaka. Roland, just tell me, how many people do you get the impression are doing just what you're doing and going to the south, further away from the nuclear reactors?
Well, certainly I think among foreigners in Tokyo, many people have. First, wives and children were sent off by expat workers here. Then some of those expat workers themselves decided it was time to go to another part of Japan. I think in terms of Japanese people, though, they are somewhat more stoical about it. People are saying that, look, we generally trust the advice that Tokyo is safe from radiation and we're going to stay in Tokyo. But as the week has drawn on and the uncertainty has got worse and the aftershocks have shaken people up more, I think more and more people are deciding that it is a good time to go and visit grandparents to another part of the country. And the trains down here are certainly pretty busy.
And Roland, Japan's government has now admitted that it's overwhelmed. Can you give us a sense of just how much of an admission this is for a Japanese administration to make?
Well, I think it is a big admission, but then again, this is a big crisis. They've had the earthquake, the tsunami, and the trying to deal with the nuclear reactor at Fukushima. And remember this too, just before the earthquake struck, Naoto Kan, the Prime Minister who has to deal with this, was on his knees. People were predicting he would be out of office within days or hours. So this was a man with a very weak government who now has to face what he has described as Japan's worst crisis since World War II.
Roland in Osaka, thank you very much indeed for all your reporting this last week. As we've noted, it has been a week now since tragedy struck in Japan, and the scale of the disaster is still coming to light. Entire communities were wiped out along the country's northeast coast, and the suffering there has only been compounded by the nuclear crisis the nation faces. So how are people coping? The BBC's Rachel Harvey has been to the fishing town of Kesennuma on Japan's east coast to find out.
From a distance, Kesennuma is still a pretty harbour town. Up close, the scars become clear. A coastal community ravaged by the force of nature. But 1 week on, the clean-up is already underway. Toshio Katsukura has been a fisherman here for 48 years, like his father and grandfather before him. He watched from the shore as the tsunami waters approached.
We saw the water swamp the first floor, then the second floor, so we moved up to the third floor. Then boats were on fire. It was like the whole ocean was on fire. We escaped through the back of the building. We were just wearing slippers. People who tried to escape in cars were swallowed by the water. The traffic was so bad they couldn't move fast enough, but people who ran survived.
Those who can are leaving town. These Chinese workers have been here for 3 years. They've become part of the community, but the trauma of all they've witnessed is too much. It was horrifying, unimaginable, she says. Will you ever come back, I ask? No, she says, never. The awful reality of what's happened here is still sinking in. Lists of names cover the walls. Those missing. Those who've perished. And those who've survived. Everywhere we've been in the past week, we've come across people trying to salvage what they can from this wreckage. But when you look at the sheer scale of this destruction, these kind of gestures almost seem futile. These communities are going to have to be rebuilt. But where do you start? Toshio Katsakura is struggling to comprehend what's happened to his hometown.
It's hard to think how we can recover from this. So many people here worked in the fishing industry, but now their jobs are gone. It's going to be really hard, but we will fight with everything we have to come back from this. We just have to work out how.
There's a long, hard road ahead. Rachel Harvey, BBC News, Kesennuma, northeast Japan.
As the people of Japan try to chart that path to recovery, few will ever forget the images which have come out of the country in the past week. Tonight we've compiled some of the searing video which captures both the ferocious power of Mother Nature and the human tragedy left in the tsunami's wake.
When somebody came up the hill saying that there was another tsunami coming, and everyone's just running now to try and get as far inland as possible. We don't know if it's coming or not, but it'd be risky not to run.